I had just poured my first cup of coffee, as a truly retired woman, when my phone rang. My daughter-in-law's voice cut through like a knife. "Dana, I'm dropping the kids off tomorrow. All 4 of them. For 2 weeks. You're retired now, so you don't do anything anymore. You can watch them while I take my trip to Hawaii." I felt my jaw tighten. I smiled to myself, said nothing, and hung up. She had no idea what she'd just started. I picked up my phone again and made 3 calls. Sitting there in my kitchen, staring at the phone I'd just set down, I felt something shift inside me. For 38 years, I'd been an elementary school teacher in suburban Indiana. 38 years of arriving at 7 in the morning, staying until 5 in the evening, grading papers on weekends, attending parent conferences, organizing fundraisers, and pouring my heart into other people's children. My last year had been particularly brutal. Budget cuts meant larger class sizes, more administrative duties, and less support. I'd counted down the days until retirement, like a prisoner marking time on a cell wall. 6 weeks ago, I'd walked out of Lincoln Elementary School for the last time. I'd cleaned out my desk, said goodbye to colleagues I'd known for decades, and driven home with a mixture of relief and melancholy. I was 67 years old. My modest ranch house sat on a quiet street lined with maple trees. The mortgage was paid off. My teacher's pension wasn't generous, but it was enough. I had plans. Small plans, maybe, but they were mine. I wanted to tend my garden without rushing. I wanted to read novels in the afternoon. I wanted to take the Alaskan cruise I'd been dreaming about since my husband passed away 8 years ago. Amanda had other ideas. My daughter-in-law married my son Garrett 7 years ago. She was 32 now, worked in marketing for a pharmaceutical company, and came from money. Her parents lived in a mansion in North Carolina. She drove a luxury SUV. She wore designer clothes. And from the moment she entered our family, she'd treated me like hired help rather than family. Amanda and Garrett had 4 children. Twin boys, Jacob and Joshua, were 6 years old now. Their daughter, Emma, had just turned 4. And the baby, little Sophie, was only 18 months old. I loved those children with every fiber of my being. But loving them and being taken advantage of because of that love were 2 different things. Over the past 2 years, the pattern had become clear. Amanda would call, never ask but always tell me she needed babysitting. Last minute, always last minute. A work conference, a spa day, a shopping trip. And every single time after I'd spent hours caring for her children, she'd criticize something. I'd given them the wrong snacks. I'd let them watch too much television. I'd dressed Emma in clothes that didn't match. Once, she'd actually told Garrett, right in front of me, that his mother was just sitting around doing nothing now anyway, and might as well make herself useful. That comment had stung more than she knew. This phone call, though, was different. This wasn't asking for an afternoon of babysitting. This was 2 weeks. 2 weeks with 4 children under 7, including a toddler still in diapers. And she hadn't asked. She'd announced it like I had no choice in the matter. "What else are you doing?" she'd said, her voice dripping with dismissal. "You're retired. You just sit around all day." I'd asked about Garrett. He was my son, after all. Surely he could help with his own children. "He has to work," Amanda had replied, as if that settled everything. "You don't." That's when I hung up. That's when I made my 3 calls. The first call was to my friend Margaret. We'd taught together for 20 years before she'd left education to become a travel agent. "Margaret," I said, "do you still have that Alaskan cruise package you showed me last month?" "The one leaving in 2 days?" she asked. "Dana, that's last minute. It'll be expensive." "I don't care," I said. "Book it. $3,000. Non-refundable." I didn't hesitate. The second call was to my nephew Todd. He'd gone to law school and practiced civil law in Indianapolis. "Todd," I said, "quick question. Am I legally obligated to babysit my grandchildren if my daughter-in-law demands it?" He'd laughed, thinking I was joking. When he realized I wasn't, he'd gotten serious. Absolutely not, Aunt Dana. Grandparents have no legal obligation to provide childcare. You can say no anytime you want. That's what I thought, I'd said. Thank you. The third call was to my neighbor Carol. She lived 3 houses down, and we'd been friends for 15 years. Carol, I'm taking a trip. Could you water my plants while I'm gone? Of course, she'd said. Where are you going? Alaska, I'd said. I leave tomorrow morning. That evening, I packed my bags with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. I pulled out my nicest outfits, the ones I'd been saving for a special occasion. I packed my camera, my good walking shoes, and the journal I'd been meaning to start writing in. I felt empowered. I felt justified. I felt like I was finally taking control of my own life. Before I went to bed, I wrote a note and taped it to my front door. The note was simple. Amanda, I am unavailable and will not be home. You'll need to make other arrangements. Dana. The next morning, I was up at 5. I made myself breakfast, double-checked my bags, and called a taxi to take me to the airport. At 7:30, 3 hours before Amanda was supposed to arrive, I climbed into the cab and headed toward Indianapolis International Airport. By 10, I was through security. By noon, I was 30,000 feet in the air, flying toward Seattle to catch my connecting flight to Juneau. As the plane lifted off, I felt lighter than I had in years. I was doing something for myself. Just for myself. No guilt, no apologies. I had no idea that by the time my plane touched down in Alaska, my entire world would be falling apart. 4 days into my cruise, I was standing on the deck of the ship, watching a pod of whales breach in the distance. The Alaskan coastline was breathtaking. Mountains rose straight out of the ocean, their peaks covered in snow, even in summer. The air was crisp and clean. I'd been eating good food, attending interesting lectures, and actually sleeping through the night for the first time in months. I'd turned my phone off the moment I boarded the ship. No interruptions. No demands. Just peace. That peace shattered the moment we docked in Juneau. I turned my phone back on to take some photos and send them to Margaret. Immediately, it started buzzing. 73 missed calls. Dozens of text messages. Voicemails filling my inbox. My stomach dropped. The first voicemail was from Carol. Her voice was shaking. Dana, call me immediately. Something terrible has happened. The second was from Garrett. He was yelling so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Mom, how could you do this? What were you thinking? Call me back right now. The third was from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Dana, this is Detective Harris with the Indianapolis Police Department. We need to speak with you regarding an incident involving your grandchildren. Please contact us immediately. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely scroll through the rest. There were messages from neighbors, from people at my church, from my other son Kenneth who lived in Oregon. Everyone sounded angry or panicked, or both. I found a quiet corner of the ship and listened to Garrett's messages in order. The first one was frantic. Mom, where are you? Amanda dropped the kids off and now they're saying they were found alone. Call me. The second was furious. Mom, my kids are in foster care. The police are looking for you. There's a warrant for your arrest. You need to come home now. I couldn't breathe. Foster care? Arrest? What was he talking about? I called Garrett with shaking fingers. He answered on the first ring. Where the hell are you? He shouted. I'm in Alaska, I said. Garrett, what happened? What's going on? What's going on? His voice was raw. Amanda dropped the kids off at your house like she said she would, but you weren't there. She thought you were hiding inside, being petty, so she used the spare key and left them inside. The kids were alone for almost a full day before Carol found them. My vision blurred. She left them? Inside my house? Alone? Don't act innocent, Garrett yelled. This is your fault. If you'd just watched them like she asked, none of this would have happened. Jacob and Joshua were terrified. Emma wouldn't stop crying. Sophie had been sitting in a dirty diaper for so long she has a rash. They're traumatized, Mom. And it's because you wanted to go on some selfish vacation. I left a note. I said weakly. I told her I was unavailable. Well, she didn't see it, or didn't care. And now my children have been through hell. He was crying now, which made it worse. Garrett never cried. CPS took them, Mom. I had to go through an emergency custody hearing just to get them back. There are police investigating. Amanda could face charges. You could face charges. How could you do this? I tried to explain, but he'd already hung up. The next call I made was to Detective Harris. He was professional but cold. He explained that Carol had entered my house to water the plants and found 4 children alone. The twins were scared and hungry. The 4-year-old had wet herself. The baby was screaming and had a severe diaper rash from going unchanged for so long. We found 2 notes, Detective Harris said. One from you saying you were unavailable. One from your daughter-in-law saying, and I quote, "Since you're clearly here hiding from your responsibilities, watch them. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Can you explain this situation to me, Mrs. Dana?" I tried. I explained that I'd planned a vacation, that I'd told Amanda I wouldn't be available, that I never imagined she'd actually leave the children. The problem, ma'am, is that you had a spare key arrangement with your daughter-in-law. That suggests an understanding that you would provide care. You refused that care, but didn't ensure the children's safety. That's where the legal issue arises. But I left a note, I repeated. A note isn't sufficient when children's welfare is at stake, he said. You need to return to Indianapolis immediately. There will be charges filed. I spent $3,000 on that cruise. It was non-refundable. I'd been looking forward to it for months, but I abandoned it that afternoon and booked the first flight home. 22 hours of travel, 3 layovers, no sleep. Just endless replaying of what had happened, trying to understand where everything had gone so wrong. By the time I landed in Indianapolis, I'd missed 2 days of the cruise I'd paid for. I went directly to the police station, not even stopping at home. Detective Harris was waiting for me. He was in his 40s, tired-looking, with no sympathy in his eyes. He showed me the notes. Mine, taped to the front door. Amanda's, left on my kitchen counter. He showed me photos of how the children had been found. Jacob sitting on the floor, holding Joshua, both of them with tear-stained faces. Emma curled up on my couch, asleep, her pants wet. Sophie in her playpen, screaming, her diaper sagging, and her skin red and raw. I felt sick looking at those photos. What kind of game were you 2 playing? Detective Harris asked. Because 4 children paid the price for it. It wasn't a game, I said. I just wanted my own vacation. I'd just retired. I thought she'd see the note and make other plans. You thought wrong, he said. And now we have a situation where children were endangered. You're being charged with contributing to child endangerment. The words hit me like a physical blow. Child endangerment. A criminal charge. Me, a woman who dedicated her life to children. The next stop was Child Protective Services. The caseworker, Patricia, was a severe woman in her 50s with short gray hair and glasses. She made Detective Harris look warm by comparison. I've reviewed this case, Patricia said, not bothering with pleasantries. I see 2 adults who put their own interests above 4 vulnerable children. I see a grandmother who refused to help, and a mother who made a terrible choice in desperation. Either way, children suffered. She showed me more photos. Close-ups of Sophie's diaper rash. A recording of Emma crying, asking where Grammy was. A statement from Jacob saying they'd waited and waited, but nobody came. Do you understand the psychological damage this has caused? Patricia asked. These children thought they'd been abandoned. The baby cried for hours. The older ones tried to find food, but your cabinets were too high. They were scared, and alone, and helpless. I never wanted that, I whispered. I never thought Amanda would actually leave them. That's the problem with assumptions, Mrs. Dana, Patricia said. Children paid the price for yours. I left that meeting feeling like the worst person in the world. I'd spent my entire career protecting children. Now I was being accused of harming my own grandchildren. But the worst was still to come. I drove to Garrett's house, hoping to see my grandchildren, hoping to explain. Garrett met me at the door. He wouldn't let me inside. "You need to leave," he said. "Garrett, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," he shouted. "I just got my kids back from foster care. Do you know what that was like? Do you know what I had to go through? The twins are having nightmares. Emma won't talk. Sophie screams every time someone leaves the room. They're traumatized, Mom, and it's your fault." "Amanda left them," I said. "She's the one who abandoned them inside my house." "Because you refused to help," Garrett shot back. "You could have just said yes. You could have just watched them. But no, you had to be selfish. You had to prove some kind of point. And my kids suffered for it." "I'm not your servant," I said, my own anger rising. "I'm not Amanda's free babysitter. I just retired. I earned the right to my own life." "Your own life?" Garrett's face was red. "Your family needed you and you chose a cruise. What kind of grandmother does that?" "The kind who's tired of being taken for granted," I shouted back. Garrett's expression turned cold. "Get out. I don't want you near my children. As far as I'm concerned, you're not their grandmother anymore. Amanda was right about you all along." He slammed the door in my face. I stood there on his porch, shaking, while neighbors peeked through their curtains. Someone had their phone out, recording. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove home in a daze. When I arrived, there was spray paint on my garage door. 2 words in angry red letters: child abuser. That's when I realized this wasn't just a family crisis. This was going to destroy my entire life. The public defender they assigned me was a young woman named Sarah, who looked fresh out of law school. She had 17 other cases. She could spare me maybe 20 minutes. "The situation isn't good," Sarah said, sitting across from me in a tiny office that smelled like stale coffee. "You're being charged with contributing to the endangerment of a minor. 4 counts, 1 for each child. Each count carries up to 1 year in jail and a fine of up to $5,000. "But I didn't do anything," I protested. "I just went on vacation." "You left a note saying you were unavailable, but you didn't follow up to ensure the children's safety," Sarah explained. "You had an established pattern of providing childcare. You had given your daughter-in-law a spare key, which implies an ongoing arrangement. When you withdrew that care, you had a responsibility to make certain the children would be safe. You didn't do that. How was I supposed to know she'd leave them?" "A reasonable person might have anticipated that possibility," Sarah said. "She wasn't being cruel, just factual. The prosecutor is going to argue that you were playing a game of chicken with your daughter-in-law, using the children as pawns. They're going to say you wanted to teach her a lesson and didn't care about the consequences. That's not true." "It doesn't matter what's true, Mrs. Dana. It matters what we can prove and what a jury will believe. And right now, public opinion is very much against you." She wasn't wrong. The story had hit the local news the night before. "Retired teacher abandons grandchildren" was the headline. The news had gotten hold of the photos somehow. Not the actual police photos, but enough to show 4 scared children. They'd interviewed neighbors. One woman said, "I always thought she was a nice lady, but I guess you never really know people." Another said, "Those poor babies. Who does that to their own grandchildren?" My church had been calling, not to offer support, but to ask me not to attend services for a while. Too disruptive, they said. People were upset. Former colleagues from Lincoln Elementary had seen the news. The principal had released a statement saying, "I hadn't worked there in 6 weeks, and my actions didn't reflect the school's values." As if they needed to distance themselves from me. Someone had started a petition online. Revoke Dana's teaching pension. It had 3,000 signatures already. The prosecutor handling the case was a woman named Jennifer Walsh. Sarah warned me about her. She's running for county attorney in 6 months. She sees this as a high-profile case that'll show voters she's tough on child endangerment. She's not going to be interested in a plea deal unless you admit full responsibility. "I won't do that," I said. "I didn't endanger anyone." Sarah sighed. "Then we're going to trial." I have to be honest with you, Mrs. Dana. This isn't a strong case for us. You're a 71-year-old woman who chose a vacation over helping your family. The children were found in terrible condition. Even if we argue Amanda's responsibility, you'll look selfish and callous. So I should just plead guilty to something I didn't do? I'm saying you should think very carefully about your options, Sarah said. I left her office feeling more alone than I'd ever felt. Even when my husband died, I'd had support. I'd had family. Now I had nothing. My nephew Todd called that evening. He felt terrible. Aunt Dana, I gave you legal advice without understanding the full situation. I never thought your daughter-in-law would actually abandon the kids. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, Todd, I said. Let me recommend a good criminal defense attorney, he said. Sarah means well, but she's overworked. You need someone who can devote real time to your case. The attorney Todd recommended was named Bernard Fletcher. He was in his 60s, experienced, with a good reputation. He was also expensive, $15,000 up front. I'd have to take out a loan against my house, which I'd worked 30 years to pay off. But what choice did I have? Bernard reviewed my case and was more optimistic than Sarah. This is winnable, he said. Amanda knew you wouldn't be home. We can prove that. The question is whether the jury will sympathize with you or think you were being stubborn and petty. I wasn't being petty, I said. I was setting boundaries. I believe you, Bernard said. But we need to make 12 strangers believe you too. Meanwhile, Amanda returned from Hawaii. Tanned and refreshed, she played the victim perfectly. She gave an interview to the local news station. She cried real tears. I trusted my mother-in-law to be there for our family, she said. I had no way of knowing she'd abandon my babies. I'll never forgive myself for trusting the wrong person. She'd shown the police text messages from months earlier, where I'd said things like, I'm always here for my grandchildren, and you know you can count on me. She claimed those messages gave her every reason to believe I'd be available. Of course, she'd conveniently deleted the text I'd sent her the day before she dropped off the kids. The one that said, I won't be available tomorrow. But Bernard found it. He subpoenaed phone company records, and there it was. Proof that Amanda knew I wouldn't be there. I was so relieved. This cleared me. This proved she knew. But when we showed it to Prosecutor Walsh, she just shrugged. This actually makes your client look worse, she said. It shows there was communication. It shows your client deliberately told the mother she wouldn't be available, but didn't follow up to ensure child safety. It proves premeditation of the refusal to help. Bernard turned to me after that meeting. She's offering a plea deal. Plead guilty to a misdemeanor, no jail time, probation, small fine. Your record will show a conviction, but it'll be better than risking trial. What about my teaching pension? I asked. A misdemeanor probably won't affect it, he said. Probably. Probably wasn't good enough. That pension was all I had to live on. I won't plead guilty, I said. I didn't do anything wrong. Then we go to trial, Bernard said. But you need to understand, Dana. Even if you're legally right, you might still lose. Juries are unpredictable, especially in cases involving children. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those photos of my grandchildren, about Jacob and Joshua, scared and hungry, about Emma, confused about why Grammy didn't come, about little Sophie, crying in a dirty diaper. I kept thinking maybe everyone was right. Maybe I should have just watched them. Maybe my vacation wasn't worth all this. But then I'd remember Amanda's voice on the phone, the dismissiveness, the assumption that my time meant nothing, the years of being treated like the help, and I'd get angry all over again. 2 days later, everything got worse. Garrett filed for a restraining order against me. He claimed I was dangerous to his children. He cited my criminal behavior and lack of judgment. A judge granted a temporary order pending the outcome of my criminal trial. I was now legally barred from coming within 500 feet of my own grandchildren. I couldn't attend their school events, couldn't go to their birthday parties, couldn't see them at all. At 71 years old, I'd lost my family, my reputation, my savings, and my peace of mind. And I was facing trial for a crime I didn't believe I'd committed. The trial was set for 3 months away. 3 months of living in limbo. 3 months of being the pariah of my community. 3 months of wondering if I'd end up in jail. I should have known things would get even worse before they got better. Amanda started a blog. She called it Protecting Our Children from Family Toxicity. She never used my name, but everyone knew exactly who she was writing about. Her first post was titled, When the People Who Should Love Them Most Become the Danger. She wrote about trusting family members with childcare. She wrote about manipulation and control disguised as love. She wrote about grandmother figures who use grandchildren as bargaining chips in power struggles. I gave her everything, Amanda wrote. Respect, trust, access to my precious babies. And she threw it back in my face because I wouldn't grovel and beg for her help. She wanted me to understand she was in charge now. She wanted to punish me for having a career, for having a life, for not being subservient to her demands. The post got 5,000 shares. Women in the comments section rallied around her. "You're so strong," they wrote. "What a toxic person. And those poor children. Thank God they have you." Her second post was titled, The Cost of Standing Up to Family Bullies. She wrote about the trauma her children had experienced. She described, in heartbreaking detail, how Jacob had nightmares about being trapped, how Emma refused to sleep alone, how Sophie would panic if left in a room by herself for even a moment. "My babies are in therapy now," she wrote. At 6, 4, and 18 months old, they need professional help to recover from what one spiteful woman did to them. And people wonder why I'm speaking out. I'm speaking out because silence protects abusers. 10,000 shares on that one. Amanda's blog gave her a platform. She started appearing on local morning shows as an advocate for parental vigilance. She talked about the dangers of assuming family members would do right by your children. She became, somehow, a voice for victimized parents, and I became the monster in her story. My best friend Margaret stopped calling. When I finally worked up the courage to call her, she was awkward and distant. "Dana, I feel terrible about booking that cruise for you," she said. "If I'd known what would happen, I never would have done it." "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "I asked you to book it." "I know, but people are asking me about it. They know we're friends. It's causing problems for my business. People don't want to book with an agent who helped someone abandon their grandkids." "I didn't abandon anyone." My voice was louder than I intended. "I know you didn't mean to," Margaret said carefully. "But that's how it looks. I'm sorry, Dana. I just need some space right now." She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, realizing I'd just lost my closest friend. The isolation was suffocating. I stopped going to the grocery store because people would recognize me and whisper. I stopped checking my mailbox during the day because neighbors would be outside. I pulled my curtains closed and lived like a prisoner in my own home. The stress was destroying my body. I lost 20 pounds in 6 weeks. I couldn't sleep more than 2 or 3 hours a night. My blood pressure spiked to dangerous levels. My doctor prescribed medication and warned me about stress-related heart problems. "You need to find ways to relax," Dr. Patterson said. "Take walks. Do meditation. Find activities that calm you." How could I take walks when people yelled at me from their cars? How could I relax when I was facing jail time? My other son, Kenneth, finally called from Oregon. He was Garrett's older brother by 3 years. He'd always been more level-headed than Garrett. "Mom, you need to drop this," he said. "Accept the plea deal and move on." "I won't admit to something I didn't do," I said. "Even if it means losing everything?" Kenneth asked. "Because that's where this is headed. Garrett's not speaking to you. Your grandkids don't understand why Grammy's gone. Your savings are disappearing. Your health is failing. Is being right really worth all that?" "It's about more than being right," I said. "It's about the truth." Kenneth sighed. "The truth is messy, Mom. Sometimes it's better to just move forward." Even my own son didn't fully support me. Bernard Fletcher hired a private investigator. The investigator, a woman named Linda, started digging into Amanda's background. What she found was interesting. Amanda had a falling out with her own parents 3 years ago. They'd stopped speaking entirely. When Linda reached out to them, Amanda's mother said cryptically, "My daughter has a way of making herself the victim in every situation. Whatever she's telling you, there's another side to that story." But Amanda's parents wouldn't give details. They were afraid of her. Amanda's sister Brenda was the one who went to Hawaii with her. Linda interviewed Brenda. At first, Brenda supported Amanda's version of events, but Linda kept pushing, and eventually Brenda said something revealing. "Look, Amanda was angry about the whole babysitting thing. She felt disrespected. She wanted to teach Dana a lesson." "What kind of lesson?" Linda asked. Brenda got nervous and clammed up. She wouldn't say more. But it was enough to suggest Amanda's motives weren't as pure as she claimed. Bernard wanted to use this in court. He wanted to paint Amanda as manipulative and vindictive. But Prosecutor Walsh argued it was irrelevant. "Whatever Amanda's character, your client still refused to ensure child safety," Walsh said. "That's the crime we're prosecuting." Walsh was relentless. She increased the charges from a misdemeanor to a felony. Reckless endangerment instead of contributing to endangerment. The new charge carried 3 to 5 years in prison. "She's playing politics," Bernard said angrily. "She wants to look tough for her election campaign. She's making an example of you." Walsh gave a statement to the press. "No child should suffer because adults play power games. This case sends a message that children's welfare comes first, always, regardless of family dynamics." The statement made me sound like a monster who played games with children's lives. I sat in my house, curtains drawn, watching my life fall apart. I'd spent $3,000 on a cruise I never got to enjoy. I'd spent $15,000 on legal fees. I'd lost 20 pounds. My blood pressure was dangerously high. My family had disowned me. My community had turned against me. And I was facing 5 years in prison. For what? For wanting to take a vacation after decades of service. For wanting my own life. For refusing to be taken for granted. I thought about accepting the new plea deal Walsh was offering. Plead guilty to a misdemeanor, get probation, keep my pension. It would all be over. But accepting meant admitting I'd harmed my grandchildren. It meant giving Amanda exactly what she wanted. Validation that she was right and I was wrong. I couldn't do it. Bernard brought me security camera footage from my neighbor's house across the street. The footage showed Amanda arriving at my house that morning. She walked up to the front door. She read my note. She stood there for a moment, looking at it. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. She looked around the street. Then she unlocked my front door, brought the children inside, and left. "This proves she read your note," Bernard said triumphantly. "She knew you weren't home. She deliberately left them there anyway." This was it. This was the evidence that would clear me. We showed it to Prosecutor Walsh. She watched it without expression. Then she said, "This doesn't exonerate your client. It proves she created an untenable situation." Yes, Amanda made a poor choice in that moment. But your client is the one who refused to help family in need, forced Amanda into a corner, and created the circumstances that led to child endangerment. "That's insane," Bernard said. "Amanda could have turned around and taken the kids home. She could have called her husband. She could have found other childcare. Instead, she left 4 children alone in an empty house. How is that my client's fault?" "Your client started this chain of events," Walsh said. "She bears responsibility." Then Walsh made an offer. She'd drop all charges against me if I agreed to testify against Amanda. Amanda would be charged with child abandonment. With my testimony and the video evidence, Amanda would likely go to prison. "Think about it," Walsh said. "You can walk away from this completely free. All you have to do is tell the truth about what Amanda did." Bernard urged me to consider it carefully. "This is the best offer you're going to get," he said. But I knew what accepting meant. It meant testifying against my son's wife. It meant helping send the mother of my grandchildren to prison. It meant ensuring Garrett would never, ever forgive me. It meant choosing my freedom over any hope of reconciling with my family. I need time, I told Bernard. You have 48 hours, he said. I went home and stared at the walls of my house. The house I'd lived in for 33 years. The house where I'd raised my boys. The house I'd almost paid off when all of this started. The house I'd taken a loan against to pay for my defense. If I testified against Amanda, I'd keep this house. I'd keep my freedom. I'd clear my name. But I'd lose my family forever. If I refused, I'd go to trial. I might go to prison. I'd definitely lose everything I had left. There was no good choice. There was only choosing which loss I could live with. I agreed to testify. Bernard filed the paperwork. Prosecutor Walsh dropped all charges against me in exchange for my cooperation. Amanda was formally charged with 4 counts of child abandonment, a felony. Each count carried 2 to 10 years in prison. I thought this was the right choice. I thought the truth needed to come out. I thought justice mattered more than keeping peace. I was wrong about what it would cost me. The morning after the charges against Amanda were filed, Garrett came to my house. He violated the restraining order he'd taken out against me. He didn't care. He stood on my front porch and pounded on my door until I opened it. "You'd rather send my wife to prison than just admit you were wrong?" he screamed. Neighbors came outside to watch. Someone across the street had their phone out, recording. "Garrett, please come inside," I said. "Let me explain." There's nothing to explain. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. My children need their mother. Do you understand that? Jacob, Joshua, Emma, and Sophie need Amanda. But you'd rather destroy her, destroy our family, than take any responsibility for what you did. "I didn't do anything," I shouted back, my own anger finally breaking through. "I went on a vacation. I earned that vacation. Amanda is the one who left 4 children alone in an empty house." "Because you forced her hand," Garrett yelled. "You backed her into a corner and left her no choice." "She had plenty of choices," I said. "She could have called you. She could have found other childcare. She could have canceled her trip. Instead, she abandoned your children to prove a point." "Don't you dare talk about my wife that way." Garrett stepped closer, his finger pointed at my face. "You have been against her from day one. You've never respected her. You've never accepted her. And now you're trying to destroy her because she dared to ask you for help." "She didn't ask, Garrett," she demanded. "She's treated me like a servant for 7 years. And the one time I said no, the one time I chose myself, she did this." "You chose yourself over your grandchildren," Garrett said, his voice suddenly quiet and cold. It was worse than the yelling. "You are dead to me. Do you hear me? You are not my mother anymore. My mother would never do this to her own family." He turned and walked away. I stood there on my porch, shaking, tears streaming down my face, while half the neighborhood watched. That video went viral. Someone posted it on every local social media group. The comments were brutal. "That grandmother is so cold. Imagine choosing pride over your own grandchildren. She'd rather destroy a young mother than admit she was wrong. Those poor kids are going to lose their mom because grandma wants to be right." Amanda's wealthy family hired a top defense attorney from Chicago. His name was Marcus Brennan, and he was famous for winning impossible cases. He was also famous for being ruthless. Brennan immediately went on the offensive. He filed a countersuit against me. His claim was shocking. I had conspired to entrap Amanda, deliberately creating a situation where she would be blamed, because I wanted to get revenge and eventually gain custody of the grandchildren. His evidence was circumstantial but damaging. He'd gone through my emails and found messages I'd sent to Margaret and other friends over the years. Messages where I'd complained about Amanda. "She treats me like the help. She's so entitled. I don't know how much more I can take." He read these emails aloud at a press conference. He painted me as a bitter, vindictive woman who'd been planning this for years. "Dana resented her daughter-in-law from the beginning," Brennan told reporters. "She couldn't control her son's life anymore. She couldn't control his choice of spouse. So she engineered this entire situation to destroy Amanda and take the children for herself. It was absurd. but it was also believable enough that people started questioning my motives. The media coverage intensified. News vans parked on my street. Reporters knocked on my door constantly. Someone started a counter-petition. Defend Amanda, a mother under attack. It got 50,000 signatures. Amanda gave interview after interview. She cried. She talked about her children. She presented herself as a young mother trying her best, betrayed by a jealous older woman. I thought she loved my children, Amanda said on a morning show, dabbing her eyes. I thought she wanted to be part of their lives. But she only wanted control. And when I wouldn't give her that control, she did this. The civil lawsuit sought $250,000 in damages. Amanda's family claimed I'd caused emotional distress, necessitated therapy, traumatized the children, and damaged Amanda's reputation. $250,000. I had maybe $40,000 in equity left in my house after the loan I'd taken for legal fees. This lawsuit would bankrupt me completely. Bernard warned me that defending myself in the civil suit would cost another $50,000 minimum. You're already stretched thin, he said. I don't know how you'll afford this. What choice do I have? I asked. You could settle, he said. Apologize publicly, pay what you can, and move on. Never, I said. The trial date approached. Bernard prepared me to testify. We did mock cross-examinations. Brennan was going to be brutal, Bernard warned. He'd attack my character. He'd make me look petty and bitter. He'd twist every word. You need to stay calm no matter what he says, Bernard coached me. If you lose your temper, the jury will see you as the vindictive woman he's painting you as. I tried. I practiced. But in the practice sessions, I kept breaking down or getting defensive. This isn't going to be easy, Bernard said. 3 days before trial, my other son Kenneth called. Mom, Garrett, and Amanda are moving to North Carolina. They've already put their house on the market. Amanda's parents have a job lined up for Garrett down there. My heart sank. When? As soon as the trial is over, Kenneth said. Win or lose, you're going to lose them, Mom. They're taking the kids across the country. You'll never see your grandchildren again. I hung up and sat in my empty house. At 71 years old, I'd lost everything. My savings, my reputation, my health, my family. Even if I won in court, I'd lost what mattered most. That night, I had severe chest pains. I thought I was having a heart attack. I called 911. The ambulance took me to the hospital. It wasn't a heart attack. It was a severe panic attack brought on by stress. My blood pressure was through the roof. The doctor admitted me overnight for observation. I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, and thought, how did wanting my own life lead to this? While I was in the hospital, Marcus Brennan filed an emergency motion. He argued that I was mentally unstable and my testimony should be excluded from trial. He cited my hospitalization. He cited my weight loss. He called it erratic behavior, consistent with someone experiencing a psychological break. He found former teaching colleagues who said I'd become difficult in my last year of teaching. He made it sound like I was having a breakdown, like I couldn't be trusted. The judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation. If the court-appointed psychiatrist found me mentally unstable, the video evidence could be excluded as coming from an unreliable witness. Without the video and without my testimony, there would be no case against Amanda. Worse, Prosecutor Walsh hinted that if I was found mentally incompetent, she might revisit the original charges against me. She wasn't competent to make the deal, Walsh said to reporters. If the psychiatrist finds her unstable, we may need to reconsider whether she should have been charged in the first place. I was trapped in a nightmare. My mental health evaluation could either save me or destroy me completely. If the psychiatrist said I was stable, I'd testify and face Brennan's brutal cross-examination. If he said I was unstable, I'd lose the ability to defend myself and might face criminal charges again. There was no way out. No matter what happened, I was going to lose. The court-appointed psychiatrist was a man in his 50s named Dr. Raymond Shaw. He had a kind face, but serious eyes. He interviewed me in a small office at the courthouse for 4 hours. He asked about my mental state, my decision-making process, my motivations. He asked about my teaching career, my retirement, my relationship with Amanda. He asked about the vacation, the note, what I'd thought would happen. I tried to appear rational and calm. I tried to explain without sounding defensive, but I was exhausted. I hadn't slept properly in months. I'd lost so much weight my clothes hung off me. My hands shook. My voice wavered. "Do you regret refusing to watch your grandchildren?" Dr. Shaw asked. It was a loaded question. If I said yes, it sounded like an admission of guilt. If I said no, it sounded callous. "I regret what happened to them," I said carefully. "I never wanted them to be scared or hurt, but I don't regret taking my vacation. I earned that right after 38 years of teaching. I earned the right to my own life." Dr. Shaw wrote something in his notes. His expression didn't change. "Do you feel you handled the situation correctly?" he asked. Another trap. I think I could have followed up with a phone call to confirm Amanda had made other arrangements, I admitted. But I truly believed she would. I never imagined she'd leave them alone. "Why didn't you follow up?" "Because I was tired," I said, and then I started crying. I couldn't help it. I was so tired of being taken for granted. I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter. I wanted just one thing that was mine. Just one trip. Just one choice that was about me and not about everyone else. I cried for 10 minutes while Dr. Shaw sat there silently, occasionally writing notes. When I finally composed myself, he asked, "Are you currently under a doctor's care?" I told him about my blood pressure medication, my anxiety medication, my sleeping pills. I told him about the panic attack that sent me to the hospital. He asked if I'd ever had mental health issues before. I said no, never, not until all of this happened. The interview ended. Dr. Shaw said he'd submit his report within 2 weeks. I went home and waited. Those 2 weeks were agony. I barely left my bed. I stopped answering the phone. I let the mail pile up. I existed in a fog of dread and exhaustion. Bernard called several times. I didn't answer. Finally, he came to my house and pounded on the door until I let him in. "Dana, you can't just give up," he said, looking at me with concern. "I know this is hard, but you have to keep fighting." "What's the point?" I asked. "I've already lost everything that matters." "You haven't lost yet," Bernard said. "Shaw's report isn't in. The trial hasn't happened. You can still win this." "And then what?" I said. "Even if Amanda goes to prison, my son hates me. My grandchildren are moving to North Carolina. I'm broke. I'm sick. I'm 71 years old, and I have nothing left." "You have the truth," Bernard said. "The truth doesn't pay my bills," I said bitterly. "The truth doesn't bring my family back." Bernard left, and I went back to bed. Dr. Shaw's report arrived on a Thursday. Bernard called me immediately. "It's good news," he said. "Shaw found you mentally competent. He noted signs of severe stress-related disorders and recommended treatment, but he said you can testify." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt nothing, because I knew what came next. The trial started on a Monday in early November. The courthouse was packed. Media filled the hallway. Protesters stood outside with signs. Half supported Amanda. Mothers Against Family Abuse. The other half, surprisingly, supported me. Grandparents have rights too. I sat at the defense table with Bernard. Across the aisle, Amanda sat with Marcus Brennan. She wore a conservative dress and minimal makeup. She looked like the wholesome young mother she wanted the jury to see. The jury selection took 2 days. 12 people who would decide Amanda's fate. 8 women, 4 men, ages ranging from 20s to 60s. Bernard had tried to strike anyone with young children, figuring they'd sympathize with Amanda. Brennan had tried to strike anyone over 60, figuring they'd sympathize with me. Prosecutor Walsh gave her opening statement. She painted Amanda as a desperate mother who made a terrible choice in a moment of panic. Was it wrong? Yes. Was it criminal? That's what you're here to decide. But remember the context. A grandmother who refused to help, who created an impossible situation, and who left her daughter-in-law with no good options. Brennan gave his statement for the defense. Amanda trusted family. She trusted that despite a note, despite a disagreement, her mother-in-law would be there when it mattered. Because that's what grandmothers do. They show up. This case isn't about one bad decision. It's about a vindictive older woman trying to destroy a young mother's life. The prosecution called witnesses. Police officers who found the children. The CPS caseworker who described their condition. Neighbors who testified about hearing the children crying. Then Garrett testified. He looked haggard. He'd lost weight too. His eyes were red. He took the oath and sat in the witness chair. Prosecutor Walsh asked him about that day. About getting the call from police. About going to the CPS office to try to get his children back. About the custody hearing. About bringing them home and trying to comfort them through their nightmares. Did you know your mother would be unavailable that day? Walsh asked. No, Garrett said. I was at work. I didn't know about any of this until it was too late. Did your wife know? Garrett hesitated. She says she thought my mother would be there despite the note. Amanda believed family would show up when needed. Brennan cross-examined, getting Garrett to describe the children's ongoing trauma. The nightmares, the separation anxiety, the therapy sessions. Do you blame your mother for this? Brennan asked. Yes, Garrett said, not looking at me. If she'd just helped, none of this would have happened. I sat there, watching my son testify against me, and felt something inside me break completely. The prosecution rested. Brennan called his witnesses. Child psychologists talking about trauma. Amanda's friends talking about what a devoted mother she was. Amanda's parents talking about what a responsible daughter she'd been. Then Amanda testified. She was perfect. She cried at the right moments. She spoke softly and sadly. She described her panic when she saw my note. She claimed she'd left the children inside because she truly believed I was home, hiding, and would hear them and come out. I thought she was teaching me a lesson, Amanda said, tears streaming. I thought she wanted me to panic and beg. So I left them there and went to the airport, thinking she'd take care of them, like always. I never dreamed she'd really leave them alone. It was a lie. The security video proved it. But Amanda told the lie beautifully. Then it was time for me to testify. I took the stand on a Wednesday afternoon. I swore to tell the truth. Bernard led me through my direct examination. I explained my career, my retirement, my excitement about finally having time for myself. I explained Amanda's pattern of demanding childcare and criticizing my every move. I explained the phone call, the note, the cruise. Did you intend for the children to be left alone? Bernard asked. Absolutely not, I said. I thought Amanda would see the note and make other arrangements. I never imagined she'd leave them. Why didn't you follow up to confirm? This was the critical question. Because I was tired of being treated like a servant rather than a grandmother. I wanted Amanda to understand I had my own life. I thought one vacation, one boundary, would make that clear. On direct examination, I sounded reasonable, sympathetic, even. Then Marcus Brennan stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Dana, you could have just said yes when your daughter-in-law asked for help, correct? She didn't ask, I said. She told me. But you could have agreed, correct? Yes, but I had plans. A cruise, Brennan said. You chose a cruise over helping your family. I chose my own retirement over being taken for granted, I corrected. You knew your daughter-in-law needed help, correct? She wanted a vacation. That's different from needing help. So you judge which needs are legitimate? Brennan asked, his voice sharp. No, I just believe my time has value too. Brennan pulled out printed emails. These are messages you sent to friends over the years. Let me read a few. Amanda treats me like the help. She's so entitled. I don't know how much more I can take. You resented your daughter-in-law, didn't you? I resented being disrespected, I said. You never liked her, did you? You never accepted your son's marriage. That's not true. Really? Then why do you have dozens of emails complaining about her? Why did you tell your friend Margaret that Amanda was destroying your relationship with your son? Because she was, I said, my voice rising. She came between us. She made Garrett choose between his mother and his wife. Or maybe you couldn't accept that your son grew up and started his own family, Brennan said smoothly. Maybe you couldn't handle not being the most important woman in his life anymore. And when your daughter-in-law dared to ask you for help, you saw an opportunity to teach her a lesson. Isn't that what this was really about? Teaching her a lesson? No, but my voice was shaking. You wanted to show her who was in control, Brennan continued. You wanted to prove she needed you more than you needed her. You wanted her to come crawling back, apologizing, begging. Admit it, Mrs. Dana. This was about power and control. It was about respect, I shouted. It was about being treated like a human being instead of free childcare. So you used your grandchildren as pawns in your power struggle with their mother. I did not. You chose your pride over their safety. No. You knew there was a risk they'd be left alone. But you didn't care because you wanted to win. That's not true. I was crying now, shaking. I just wanted one thing for myself. Just one vacation after 38 years of putting everyone else first. I taught other people's children every day for almost 4 decades. I raised 2 sons. I've always been there for everyone. Why is wanting my own life so wrong? The courtroom was silent. I'd lost control. I'd played right into Brennan's hands. No further questions, Brennan said softly, sitting down. I left the stand feeling defeated. Bernard tried to do damage control and redirect, but it was too late. The jury had seen me break down. They'd seen the bitter, defensive woman Brennan wanted them to see. The jury deliberated for 3 days. 3 agonizing days of waiting. On Friday afternoon, they came back. We, the jury, find the defendant Amanda not guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Amanda burst into tears. Garrett hugged her. Reporters rushed out to file their stories. I sat there, numb, while people celebrated around me. The jury's reasoning, explained later, while Amanda made a terrible choice, she had a reasonable expectation based on past history that I would be there. The abandonment was unintentional, caused by miscommunication and panic, not criminal intent. Amanda was free, vindicated, the victim in everyone's eyes, and I was the villain who'd tried to destroy her. After the verdict, Prosecutor Walsh approached me. "The civil suit will proceed," she said. "Amanda's attorneys will argue you defamed her with false accusations. You'll lose. You'll lose your house." I walked out of that courthouse alone. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. I had nothing to say. I'd fought for the truth. I'd spent every penny I had. I'd sacrificed my family, my health, my reputation, and I'd lost anyway. I went home and sat in the dark for 3 days. I didn't eat. I barely drank water. I just sat there, replaying everything, wondering where I'd gone wrong. On the 4th day, my doorbell rang. I ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, I dragged myself to the door and opened it. A woman in her 30s stood there. She looked nervous. It took me a moment to recognize her. Brenda, Amanda's sister. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice flat. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Please, I need to talk to you." I almost said no, but something in her expression stopped me. She looked guilty, scared, desperate. I let her in. We sat in my living room. Brenda wouldn't look at me. She kept twisting her hands together. "I can't live with this anymore," she finally said. "I've been carrying this guilt for months, and I can't do it anymore." "What are you talking about?" Brenda pulled out her phone. "In Hawaii, Amanda and I shared a hotel room. One night, after we'd been drinking, she started talking about you, about her plan. I recorded it because I thought she was being awful, but I never thought it would go this far." She pressed play. Amanda's voice came through the phone speaker. She was laughing. I knew Dana wouldn't be home. I read her stupid note, but I wanted to scare her. I wanted her to think I'd actually left the kids. I was going to rescue them after a couple hours and look like the hero, while she looked like the villain who wouldn't help. Brenda's voice on the recording. That's kind of mean, Amanda. Amanda. She deserves it. She thinks she can just say no to me. She thinks her little retirement vacation is more important than family. I'm going to teach her what happens when you cross me. I'll drop the kids off. Let her panic when she realizes they're there, and then I'll come back and save the day. By the time I'm done, she'll be so desperate to see those kids again. She'll do whatever I want forever. The recording continued. Amanda talking about how she'd deliberately planned the timing so I'd be gone. How she'd used the situation to make me look bad to Garrett. How she'd always resented my influence over her husband, and saw this as a way to drive a wedge between us permanently. Then Amanda said something that made my blood run cold. The only problem is my flight back doesn't land until late, so the kids might be alone for most of the day. But whatever. Dana will probably come home early from her stupid cruise when she realizes what happened. And if she doesn't, well, the kids will be fine for a few hours. They're not babies. But Amanda's flight had been delayed by weather. What she'd planned as a few hours alone turned into almost a full day. The recording ended. I sat there, stunned. Why are you giving this to me now? I asked Brenda. Why didn't you come forward during the trial? Brenda started crying. Because Amanda threatened me. Our mother is 83 and in a nursing home. Amanda controls the trust fund that pays for her care. She said if I testified against her, she'd cut me off completely and move Mom to a state facility. I couldn't let that happen. So why now? Because I saw you on the news after the verdict, Brenda sobbed. You looked so destroyed. And Amanda's acting like she's some kind of hero. Like she's this perfect victim. I can't watch her do this anymore. It's not right. She planned the whole thing. She deliberately set you up. And she's letting you take the blame. I took the phone from her shaking hands. Can I keep this recording? It's yours, Brenda said. I made copies. I've written out a full statement of everything Amanda told me in Hawaii. I'll testify to all of it if you need me to. Even if Amanda cuts you off from your mother? Brenda nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll figure something out, but I can't let you lose everything because of my cowardice. After Brenda left, I called Bernard. He came over immediately. When he heard the recording, his eyes widened. This changes everything, he said. This proves Amanda perjured herself in court. This proves she intentionally endangered her own children. This is criminal conspiracy, false reporting, witness tampering. Walsh will have to bring new charges. What about me? I asked. What about the civil suit? This destroys it, Bernard said. This proves everything you said about Amanda was true. You can't defame someone by telling the truth. Not only will the suit be dismissed, but you could potentially sue her for malicious prosecution. Within 48 hours, Bernard had filed emergency motions. He'd sent the recording to Prosecutor Walsh, to the judge, and to the media. The story exploded. Perfect mother admits she set up. Grandmother was the headline. The recording went viral. Every news station played it. Social media erupted. Amanda's blog was flooded with thousands of angry comments, calling her a liar and a manipulator. The morning show that had featured her pulled all her appearances from their streaming platforms. Her Instagram was deleted after she received death threats. Her employer put her on administrative leave, pending an investigation. Prosecutor Walsh called a press conference. Based on new evidence, we're investigating Amanda for perjury, filing false police reports, and child endangerment. The case against her will be reopened. Marcus Brennan immediately withdrew as Amanda's attorney. No lawyer wanted to touch her case now. Amanda's parents released a statement through their attorney. We are horrified by our daughter's actions and offer our sincere apologies to Dana. And then Garrett called me. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Mom. His voice was broken. Mom, I'm so sorry. I heard the recording. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. He came to my house that evening. He stood on my porch, the same porch where he'd screamed at me weeks earlier, and he cried. I believed her, he said. She's my wife, the mother of my children. I believed everything she told me. And I turned my back on you. I said terrible things to you. How can you ever forgive me? I looked at my son, at the pain in his eyes, at the genuine remorse. He'd been manipulated too. He'd been Amanda's victim as much as I had been. Come inside, I said. We sat at my kitchen table and talked for hours. Garrett told me he'd been blind to Amanda's manipulations. He'd seen warning signs over the years, but ignored them because he loved her, because she was the mother of his children, because admitting she was toxic felt like admitting he'd made a terrible mistake. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know, Garrett admitted. I have 4 kids. They need their mother. But I can't trust her anymore. I can't live with someone who would do this to my own mother. Don't make any decisions tonight, I said. Think about what's best for those children. They've been through enough. The next week, Amanda's attorney approached Bernard with a settlement offer. They wanted to drop the civil suit against me. They offered $150,000 in damages to me. Amanda would make a public apology, admitting she'd lied. In exchange, I wouldn't push for maximum prison time in the perjury case. Bernard urged me to reject it. You can destroy her completely, he said. She deserves it after what she did to you. I thought about my grandchildren. Jacob and Joshua, who were 7 now. Emma, who was 5. Sophie, who was 2. If Amanda went to prison for years, what would happen to them? Garrett would be a single parent, struggling, overwhelmed. The children would grow up with their mother behind bars. Did I want revenge that badly? I'll accept the settlement, I told Bernard, but with conditions. The conditions were: Amanda had to attend counseling for manipulative behavior. I got regular visitation rights with my grandchildren, legally protected in writing. Amanda had to make a video apology and post it publicly. Amanda agreed to everything. She had no choice. The video apology was posted on her blog. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. She cried, and for once, the tears seemed genuine. I was wrong, she said to the camera. I was cruel. I manipulated everyone. I lied to police. I lied in court. I deliberately set up my mother-in-law because I was angry that she dared to set boundaries with me. Dana deserved her retirement. She deserved respect. She deserved to be asked, not told. She deserved to take a vacation without being treated like she was abandoning her family. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The video got 2 million views. Half the comments were people saying she didn't deserve forgiveness. The other half were people saying, at least she admitted the truth. With the settlement money, I paid off every debt I had. I paid back the loan on my house. I had $75,000 left. Real money. Security. I called Margaret and asked if she could book me another Alaskan cruise. This time, I'd actually get to enjoy it. I'd love to, Margaret said, her voice warm again. And Dana? I'm sorry I doubted you. We took that cruise in April. Margaret came with me. We watched whales and glaciers. We ate good food. We laughed and talked like we used to, and I finally got to relax. On the ship, watching the sun set over the water, I thought about everything I'd learned. I'd learned that standing up for yourself sometimes costs everything. I'd learned that the truth can be buried, but not forever. I'd learned that vindication can come, but you have to fight for it. I'd learned that family can hurt you more than anyone, but they can also redeem themselves. Most importantly, I'd learned that my time had value. My life had value. And setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was necessary. 6 months after the trial, things were different. Garrett and Amanda were still married, but they were in intensive couples counseling. Amanda was in individual therapy, working on her controlling behaviors. Garrett had set new boundaries with her. He'd told her that if she ever tried to manipulate him or his family again, he'd leave and seek full custody. Amanda was trying. She was genuinely trying to change. I could see it when she brought the children over for our weekly dinners. Every Tuesday evening they came to my house. Jacob and Joshua, now 7 years old, would run into my arms and tell me about school. Emma, 5 years old, would show me her drawings. Sophie, 2 years old, would toddle over and ask me to read her a story. Garrett would help me set the table. Amanda would stand quietly in the kitchen, watching, no longer taking over or criticizing. One Tuesday, Amanda stayed after Garrett and the kids left. She stood in my doorway, hesitant. "Dana, can I talk to you?" she asked. We sat on my porch, the same porch where so much pain had unfolded. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," Amanda said. "I know what I did was unforgivable. But I want you to know I'm trying to be better. For Garrett, for the kids, for myself." "I can see that," I said. "Why did you accept the settlement?" Amanda asked. "You could have sent me to prison. You could have taken everything from me. Why didn't you?" I thought about that question. "Because revenge wouldn't have brought me peace," I finally said. "And because those children need their mother. Not the mother you were being, but the mother you're capable of becoming. I chose to give you the chance to be that person." Amanda started crying. Not the manipulative tears from before. Real tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "We're not close. We may never be close. But we're civil. We're respectful. And that's enough." On a sunny afternoon in June, I sat in my garden. The garden I finally had time to tend properly. The tomatoes were coming in. The roses were blooming. The herbs smelled wonderful. My 4 grandchildren were playing in my backyard. Jacob and Joshua were kicking a soccer ball. Emma was making a fairy house out of sticks and flowers. Sophie was digging in the dirt, completely content. Garrett was at my grill, making burgers. He'd started coming over on weekends, just him and the kids sometimes, rebuilding our relationship. My phone rang. It was Amanda, calling from inside the house where she was setting the table. "Dana, dinner's ready. Can you come in?" It was a request, not a demand, a question that expected an answer, not compliance. "I'll be right there," I said. I stood up, brushed the dirt from my gardening gloves, and looked at my family. My complicated, imperfect, healing family. I'd almost lost everything by standing my ground. I'd been accused, arrested, bankrupted, and abandoned. I'd spent months as a pariah, wondering if fighting for my boundaries was worth the cost. It was worth it. Not because I won in court. Not because I got vindication or money or apologies. It was worth it because I'd taught everyone around me something crucial. That respect isn't optional. That even grandmothers deserve consideration. That manipulation has consequences. That the truth matters. My grandchildren were learning to ask, not demand. They were learning that other people's time had value. They were learning that love doesn't mean surrendering your entire self to someone else's needs. And I'd learned that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones worth fighting. That standing up for yourself might cost you everything temporarily, but surrendering yourself costs you everything permanently. I walked toward my house, toward my family, toward the life I'd almost lost but had fought to reclaim. The phone in my pocket buzzed. A text from Margaret. "Next cruise, Alaska or somewhere new?" I smiled. I had options now. I had freedom. I had boundaries that were respected. I had a life that was mine. "Somewhere new," I texted back. "Let's try the Mediterranean," because I'd earned it. And nobody was ever going to make me feel guilty about that again. Now I want to ask you, have you ever had to set boundaries with family, even when it cost you relationships? Have you ever stood your ground on something important, only to have people call you selfish? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about real family struggles and triumphs. And share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself sometimes, that setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad person, and that standing up for what's right is worth the fight, even when the fight is hard. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it brought you some comfort, some validation, or at least some food for thought. Remember, your time has value, your life has value, and you have the right to protect both, even from the people who are supposed to love you most. Take care of yourselves out there, and never apologize for wanting a life that's yours.